Hey everyone, Andrew here. So this is our 30th Doggy Stoic episode, and we have a special guest. Her name is Hillary Ratcliff. She's a Montessori teacher of over 25 years, and just over a decade ago, she transitioned to training dogs, specifically small dogs, and how those dogs need the same rules, same boundaries, same leadership as our working dogs. So in today's episode, you guys are going to really enjoy listening to Hillary share her experience. She got a dog named Katie, this little Maltese that was just a troublemaker and super reactive, and how that started her journey as a dog trainer, much like many of us. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please let us know what you think in the comments. Welcome to the happy-go-lucky, stability, and dog fitness community. This community started when my boy Buddy, a pit bull with high drive, tore both of his CCLs about 2 years ago. And as I began learning more about how to strengthen a dog's body, I went down a rabbit hole of learning about other dogs' issues, how dogs are overweight, how they have imbalances that cause them to get injured, or they might just be lacking confidence and body awareness. Does any of this sound familiar? Here's the good thing. The more you practice these exercises inside the school community, the more you'll see how it improves your relationship with your dog. It strengthens their body and even, maybe more importantly, sharpens their mind. Inside the community, you'll see 8 to 15 minute conditioning sessions for all dogs of all ages, sizes, breeds, and temperaments. You'll also see the progression, like session 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with each dog. Lastly, we'll have a monthly Q&A, so you can ask questions and share if you're struggling with anything, and more importantly, share your wins with us. This community is about encouraging, supporting, and educating each other to help us raise happy and healthy dogs. And look, for the next 90 days, invite a friend. It's completely free. Click the link in the description below. So this one is a long time in the making, but one I think you guys are going to absolutely love. The lady sitting across from me, her name is Hillary Ratcliff, and I hope I pronounced that properly. Good Wellesley dogs from kind of the Massachusetts area, and we'll get to know Hillary a little bit better here over the next 60, 90 minutes. Hillary, she asked me, she said, I train a lot of small dogs and doodles. Is that a problem for your show? And I said, absolutely not, because I think what you're going to learn here in the next, 60, 90 minutes is these are transferable skills, whether you have a German Shepherd, you have a Lab, or you have what we both train a lot of, these, 8, 10, 15 pound doodles that are in many cases a little bit over coddled with too much affection, too much freedom right out the gate. The same principles apply. And I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. If you follow Hillary's content, she's a wealth of knowledge. She articulates things incredibly well, incredibly succinctly. And I've learned a lot from following her. So hope you guys enjoy. And without further ado, Hillary, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. Nice to be here. I appreciate it.
What is the deal with, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were previously a teacher and then you got into dog training. I had Daisy Peel on the show. She's a 10 plus time agility champion. Also, she was a teacher. What is it about that transition that, hey, I was teaching kids for such a long time and I wanted to get into dogs? How did that all happen?
Well, I didn't get into dogs because I wanted to get into dogs, and I never would have dreamt I'd be a dog trainer. And like many other dog trainers, my education with dogs started with problems I was having with my own first dog that I got about a dozen years ago. But the reality is that, yes, I was a Montessori style preschool teacher for 2 to 3 year old children for 25 years. Now I got my first dog and started having problems, at about I would say the 22-year mark in my teaching career. And it's ironic because all of the things that I was working with those quite young sort of toddler and preschoolers is an awful lot of what I do with the dogs today. But I was doing the opposite. I was making all the mistakes with my own first dog that I was coaching all of these parents for all of these years that they were making with their 2 to 3 year old child. And so it was a sort of natural progression. I learned what I was doing wrong with my dog and started helping just some friends and family members again, never dreaming that I would one day switch careers and end up making my living this way. And I started doing it just very part-time and just as a sort of favor and to help people and try to spread the knowledge that I wish was there when I got my first dog and was struggling in that first year. But after I'd been doing it for a couple of years, just very part-time, pandemic came, schools got closed, particularly up here. We get closed for a week and then 2 weeks, which then became a much longer period of time. And I had to personally make a decision. And I realized, what I'd been for 25 years, it was enough. I was really ready for a new challenge and to move on. So that's how I ended up transitioning into going from my part-time sort of hobby into building my full-time new career.
You waited 22 years to get a dog?
No, I got my first, my only experience with the dogs was when I was growing up as a child, and they were, family disaster experiences. And then I got married. I'm 60 years old, so I've lived several other lives before this one, quite frankly, in my head. I got married in my early 20s. I started having children right away. I'm the mother of 5 now adult sons, some of whom are probably your age. And I'm a grandmother too. I've got a couple of lovely grandchildren now, but I did not get a dog myself. I didn't raise a puppy. I didn't start trying to learn how to walk a dog on leash until I was close to 50. So I waited a whole lot longer than 22 years to get a dog.
Well, what I was referencing is 22 years into your career, you finally were like, what? And what was that moment like? Why did you decide to get a dog?
Oh, I got a dog for all the wrong reasons, for all the reasons everybody gets their first dog, because my children were leaving home, because I needed something to unconditionally love me, because my sister had one of these little small dogs. And, it was honestly, I hate to say it, but the reason why so many people in the situation that I was in get a dog is because we want to manage our emotions via the
companionship.
Complicated animal, companionship. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And God love her, and we lost this dog, last year. And she's kind of the dog that, we all dog trainers have that one dog that kind of made them. And she was mine. But I had no idea what fulfilling a dog's needs were. I had no idea that this little package of fluffy, living stuffed animal looking dog, that it needed many, many, if not all of the same things that a full size working, type dog really did. And she and I struggled for a year, close to a year and a half. Sure.
What was her name? What was her breed?
Her name was Katie, and she, like my other 2 dogs that I still have now, she's a Havanese, but she was a sort of oversized Havanese. She was about 18 pounds, full grown. And the struggles that I had with her, what I realized very, very early on, which I had thoroughly not expected when getting my first dog and it being a little one, is that I couldn't walk her on leash, because she would not only zigzag everywhere, but we called her the hound. She had her nose on the ground all the time. And she would not only scarf up anything that she could find that was, food related or debris related, but the nature buffet, man, she ate acorns, the rabbit poop, the sticks, the leaves. She was trying to interact with the natural world in a way that an animal would, and knowing nothing about fulfilling an animal, I just thought, oh my God, she's going to choke on everything. Oh, I've got to stop her from all of that exploration. And I couldn't walk her. So, I really had wanted to, use walking the dog as more of an exercise and social vehicle, and that wasn't working. And then, there were all of the problems that so many of my clients now have. She was barking at everything. She was lunging. She was, wanted to tear up and destroy things. And I didn't know that she was quite frustrated back then. And So I just stumbled into dog ownership with what I thought was just a cute little fluffy, package of a dog that I could, that could meet my needs. And I had no idea how to meet her needs.
It's funny. So Hillary was really gracious. I had asked her to push this podcast 30 minutes, and I didn't know that this is how it would all intertwine. I just came from a client who has a Havanese. Mm-hmm. And Archie, Becky, and Mike, awesome clients. And what's interesting about it's a really good dog. I actually really fell in love with this Havanese. Really good, like a ball of energy, but a cuddle bug at the same time. Like really fun, but a cuddle bug. And his issue was twofold. The barking and the kind of like uncooperative behavior when they didn't want to, and lunging at things as well. And they've gone through 4 other trainers, all positive reinforcement trainers, and actually has a good foundation of obedience, like knowing what to do. But up until the point Andrew got there, he's never been told no. And not necessarily like no with the punishment concept, no with the boundaries. Like, hey, you can't do X. Because when people hear no, if you sometimes follow the internet, it's like a conditioned punisher. It wasn't even that. It was just establishing some boundaries so that when we needed to use that obedience, place, mat, whatever, he would comply even if he didn't want to. So this dog, incredible dog, 4 positive reinforcement trainers. They did a great job. And up until the point Andrew got there, no boundaries were established. And just over a few sessions, because they've done such a good job up to this point, just establishing these little tiny boundaries have made such a difference. And now the walks are much more enjoyable. How did you, what was your evolution of, okay, I got Katie, great dog, issues. I'm still teaching in school. Who did you start to look to for training, guidance, advice, suggestions so that you could solve this puzzle?
Well, I did what, most of my clients do. And I just tried to consume everything. And what I didn't get a whole lot of conflicting information, but I did get a lot of, because I didn't know anything about balanced training. And, I literally got Katie from a breeder, and one of the Havanese breeders that who sent me in the direction of that breeder said, just whatever you do, make sure you never use an e-collar or a prong collar. And I said, well, there's no chance I'm going to do that because I don't know what any of those things are. So, don't worry about that. Little did I know what I didn't know. And I was consuming what I found in my part of the world, which was all, almost exclusively positive only training, and ignore the bad behavior and just reward the good. Well, the problem with that for me was that, sure, I knew how to reward good behavior, but also in rewarding behavior with food all the time, my dog was paying attention to the food, not to me. And there was never any mention about fading it out. There, they say, oh yeah, just, periodically reward. But when you're only getting results for bribing your dog with a piece of food, that's, that we don't know what we don't know as owners. And we get these little dogs and we are afraid to set limits because we're afraid that they will break if we let them pull against the end of a leash, or if we give them a little check, a little bump, hey, come back in this direction. So, as I said, I struggled for about a year, and then between a year and a year and a half, I kind of found balanced training, which then made more sense to me in regard to the teaching work that I had always done, because I was very much a old school, common sense, fair and loving teacher, but one who had no problem whatsoever saying no to children. And frankly, I had to coach their parents to say, your child is missing vitamin N. They need to know what no means, and they need to understand that your role is to lead them and their role is to follow you until they can control their behavior and make better decisions on their own. Same with the dogs. But the I mean, again, remember, I'm older, so I was looking at books. I was watching, videos. I was searching the internet, and everything was just clicks and food and clicks and food and clicks and food. But with my dog, and what I also have found with, so many of my clients where we've got, I'm dealing in a very, I'm not going to beat about the bush. I live in an affluent area, and the people who bring their dogs to me, they're not struggling financially. So these dogs have what many of these families' children have, which is too much of all the good things in life. And I know that sounds crazy, but the reality is that there was just too much attention, too much treats, too much food, and it creates what I find, it creates sort of this hyper over-adrenalized addiction to what's next all the time. And there was no counterbalance with being able to do just more traditional limit setting and simple leash work to help these dogs know where they fell into the grand scheme of life and how to be successful. And I can't remember what question led me down that rabbit hole.
Well, so much of that parallels to, so I'm here in Boca Raton, South Florida. So these dogs are not hurting for anything. They have plenty of space in their house, beautiful backyard. They have toys everywhere. They have bones. They're eating great food. Typically, one of the people in the family, or if not both, work from home at this point in their career. So, Zoom calls sit on my lap. Overabundance of everything. Yeah, I want to take it back to the prong collar, e-collar thing, because, it's so silly that like the first piece of advice someone who's getting their first dog and, is getting is like, should I use a screwdriver? That was
literally the first thing they said to me.
Screwdriver or hammer. It's like, well, hold up. Forget even what tools. Like, what should I teach my dog? And so Archie, the Havanese, is turning a year this week. And then Milo, they referred as like a Cavapoo, similar type of fluffy dog who he came to my program like right after he gets those mandatory shots, that's, and not the first thing. I mean, I love play. I love teaching the dog because when they're puppies, they'll chase anything. So you could play with food by throwing it. You play with toys. But boundary setting, I don't use a prong collar or e-collar on a puppy. That's like, I even ran into his mom today. She's like, "Hey, Andrew, is he going to need this?" He's like, "No, he's 4 months old. All I use is a basic slip leash." And just kind of guide him through life. And I find when they're puppies, when you establish boundaries at a really young age, they don't even know anything. You don't need to use those tools because they never even get into this habit of like, I'm in a perpetual state of breaking rules because I've just been reinforced. I call them these over-adrenalized dogs, dopamine junkies.
Yes.
It's probably not the right scientific word, but I think you get like the kind of.
Absolutely.
So with puppies, I just use a slip leash and I say, here's the time to play. Here's the time to rest. Here's how we navigate life. And from my experience, they get it. They get it so much easier than a dog that's already been down that rabbit hole of perpetual positive reinforcement.
Right. And I mean, I completely agree with you. And that's absolutely how I go about training puppies, although I don't usually take the youngest puppies because that's not really my niche. I find where I am that people with exceptionally young puppies and these little doodles and all that, in order for me to be able to say, look, you need to set limits with this, lovely little creature. To be frank, there has to already be a pain point in the relationship. Okay. And when I say, look, this is a slip lead and we're just going to, now I'm working with this little Samoyed puppy and
so
her owners right now. And they've been following me forever. And they were like, okay, we're on the list. We're getting our puppy. So we're getting, they got together with me from the start. So we are doing this now with literally a 14-week-old puppy. And I just put her up on my Instagram the other day because she's doing so well. But for me, most of the dogs come to me in adolescence or young adulthood, and they've already, because of their size and being over reinforced for the wrong behavior, for overexcited behavior, for all of the stuff that everyone thinks is cute in a puppy but isn't very cute in a young adult dog any longer. Because of that, and once the people are kind of going, oh, okay, this is not so fun living with this animal anymore, it's quite easy for me to say, okay, now let's take a slip lead and I'm going to show you the difference. But there are some, but when it comes to training tools with people, I never put anything on a dog without putting it on that owner's arm first and showing them what something feels like. And yeah, if you get a new puppy, you can just use a little slip lead. You can, if you have, just a little martingale, just anything, and they can learn pressure and release. But almost everybody that I end up working with is already at that pain point with that 1-year-old dog, where unfortunately they didn't realize what they were training the dog to do, which is pull them around the world. And because these are small, fluffy little dogs, or doodles that are 25 pounds or under, the reality is that people come at it without even realizing it, from this fear, as I did with Katie, of if I resist the dog on the leash, I'm going to injure their neck. Okay,
how did that lie perpetuate? That's one of the craziest lies. Every single client I have with dogs that are small say that, and I said, have you ever met a dog that's had issues with their neck from that?
Right. And the buzzword is collapsed trachea. I'm like, okay, I've been doing this for 8 years now. I have yet to encounter any dog that has tracheal collapse. But honestly, my guess, I don't know where it came from, but my guess is that it happened at the same time that the pet harness industry came into being. Because, so many people that come to me, and I try to harness too. And I don't have a problem with putting one of those little fabric harnesses on a puppy when they're, when you're not trying to teach them and communicate to them, but you're just trying to let them explore the world. I don't have a problem with that, but you can't communicate. Even a good dog trainer can, but most pet, owners, and I can't stand the word pet parents. That's just not me. Sorry. But most pet owners cannot communicate with either a front clip or back clip harness with their dog. And then we've just reinforced more pulling. But I think that don't put anything around their neck. It's all part of the over dramatic, over emotional, lack of common sense time that we are living through in history right now.
How do you navigate this question? Oh, my dog behaves so well with Hillary, but then when they go home, they revert back to their old self.
Because the very first thing that I will say to anybody, and I'm lucky because I am at a place in my life where I can pick and choose who I'm going to work with. And if I feel like we are going to butt heads about you understanding that dogs are not robots and can't be programmed, but that what you're doing is directly affecting what your dog is doing, then I'm not going to work with you. And I'm very friendly about it, and we part ways, but I know, I do a Zoom interview with anybody before I take them on as a client. And that's a paid consultation because it's my time, and, they have problems and they're coming to look, to me.
Before you even meet the dog too.
And before I've ever met, yes, no, because it's not about the dog, it's about the owner, right? But I will say to them during that initial consultation and during every lesson that we have together, whether it's one-on-one lessons or whether it is my board and train, which absolutely comes with owner lessons as part of it, that I can show you how simply and quickly we can change your dog's behavior for the better. But if you're not willing to do this very simple, and I try to boil it all really down and keep it very, very simple, because owners can't turn into dog trainers.
Yeah.
I can't do what they do for a living, and they're not going to become me to live with their dog the way that I show it on Instagram. Okay. So I say to them, I understand why your dog is doing that. And here's the small change that you need to make in order for your dog to respond to you in a similar fashion that they do to me. But I can show your dog looking as sharp and obedient and well-mannered as, any one of my dogs, if it stays here with me. And all of the dogs that come and stay with me that aren't board and trains, I offer just travel boarding to my clients, but not until I've worked with them and not until their dog has good manners. And so I can say, look, I can show you what your dog could do, but if you're not willing to step up and set limits, your dog will go immediately back to behaving that way and will continue doing it, because dogs do what works. And if this works with you and they get what their objective is, if it works for them so that they get to pull over to the other dog, or they get to the ground thing and, to eat whatever, or they get to stay at the park longer because you call them and they say no, they look at you and give you the middle finger and run the other direction. That's working for them. So why would they change for you? They change for me because I teach them fairly and then show them that there is accountability in our relationship. End of story.
So my 3, I wrote these down as you were talking, and I probably have more, but these are, so one is no rules in the house. And to which, I say that to a client and they'll be like, but my dog is perfect in the house, is kind of what they say next. And I say, well, I kind of look for these small recurring points of conflict. Like if I want to ask them, maybe they are perfect, but maybe, as soon as I go sit on the couch, it jumps up on the couch. So I'll put it away. I'll put it back on a place bed in that scenario. Even if the dog doesn't chew up the couch, I know that could be a little boundary that I could set. So no rules in the house, and I create recurring points of conflict. Number 2, repeating commands with no accountability towards that command. Mm-hmm. And 3 is 0 actual fulfillment. There's no actual real fun. So those are my 3. What would you say? And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. What are your 3 that you dumb down to clients on the Zoom call or the first evaluation?
Okay. That we absolutely must be in a leader and follower role, which really speaks to your rules of the household. Yes, I get people who say to me, he's really good at home. He's just not any good out on a leash. And then I ask them to ask their dog to do something in the home, and their dog isn't going to do it. Well, he'll do it if I get a cookie. That's not obedience. That's a bribe. That's crazy.
Archie, are you listening?
Yeah. So he'll do it any dog will do anything if you've got a cookie in your hand. That's why I try to get the cookies out of the equation as quickly as I possibly can. So that's, you have to be the leader and they have to be the follower. And until you get that relationship right now, there's very little that's going to change. The other thing, I absolutely agree with you that fulfillment, and for me, what I see that is unfulfilled in these little dogs is they never get to run off leash. Okay. And that is I am a huge advocate for, we need to be able to take our dogs out into the world and be fulfilled by letting them be the animals that they are. I see these little dogs that literally never leave the house. At worst, the yard, but mostly they never leave and I explain to people, your house for this dog is a giant crate. Okay. It's big and it's beautiful because I go to some spectacular houses, but the reality is that if they can't get out into the world and run and exercise and sniff and roll and get dirty and do all the things that all animals need to do to be fulfilled. And yes, I absolutely love playing with dogs too. But for me, what I see that is people who will toss a ball in their house 5 times and their dog runs and gets it and they think the dog is fulfilled. That's not To me, fulfillment is a dog that has the ability to go places, see the world, and be able to use its body, climb over. This is why I love Stony Dennis so much. Climb up on things, climb under things, climb through things, go through water, go through mud, be out in bad weather, and these little fluffy, clean, hypoallergenic. Look, let's face it, people get them because they want it, because they feel like the cleaner, neater alternative to living with an animal in your house than necessarily a dog that runs around outside all day and sheds hair all over your house. I understand that. That's part of what went into getting my first Havanese. But there is a real live animal under all of that fluff, and that animal needs to be fulfilled. So for me, what I laugh about, the whole e-collar thing is, virtually any dog that comes through my board and train program, they are going to get e-collar trained, not as a punishment vehicle, but as a vehicle to give them the ability to go to the park and run and know that they're, and be able to have their owner jump over that, but he doesn't come when I call him. That's because you haven't been holding him accountable. And that's what good e-collar training can do. So for me, an e-collar, no matter what size the dog, is a device to enable fulfillment for that animal. Okay. So, leadership, fulfillment for the animal, and then you want a third one. So I would say, safety. Now, safety comes from the dog learning how to make good decisions, not by the dog being given too much freedom too soon in the life in the house. So I am a huge crate advocate, as well as teaching your dog a limited amount of space in your house and expanding the freedom as the dog matures and starts to make responsible decisions. I want to set little dogs, medium dogs, any of the dogs that I work up with, I want to set dogs up to succeed, not give them too much too soon. And that often is all about the space and the freedom in the home, where they then are entertaining themselves by chewing on inappropriate things, getting into things that they shouldn't, all because they're just frustrated. And people don't realize how many hours a day a contented dog spends sleeping. And it is far better to let them spend that dozing time in a crate, if you can't pay attention to them, when they aren't fully trained to be safe in that house. End of story.
Which one of these? Obviously, I have opinions on all of them, but which of these do you find is the toughest sell?
Oh, the easy answer would be the e-collar, but that's not the toughest sell. For me, the toughest sell is getting people to step up and be the leader. Crate, most people, the crate is an easy sell for most people because most are using it to potty train their puppy. For me, that's an issue of explaining why we don't take the crate away once potty training is accomplished. Okay. E-collar, because it is tied in the way that I use it to off-leash freedom, is an easier sell down the road. But getting the person to either stop feeling sorry for their, fluffy little dog, stop feeling bad about setting limits, or stand up straight and be the leader that their little dog needs, I think that's the hardest sell. What would you think?
Taking away freedom in the house, and even with the crate, I find it interesting. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe this is one I'll let go. Is like why they need the crate to be dead center of the house. Like, why can't it be in a room where the dog could get some really nice uninterrupted sleep versus like dead center where like even today they were like, so he could see the door so he can know who's coming in. So like put the dog that's 8, 9, 10 months old that hasn't been in actually Archie has never really been in a crate that has never used a crate or hasn't used the crate in 6 months. They want that crate. Like they want the dog kind of exactly where they are in the house. So whereas for them, I say, and I've kind of let go on it, like just put the crate wherever you want. But I am a big stickler on deep sleep and deprivation, like taking your attention away from the dog so that when you return that attention, it could be like a fun, like I'm not a stickler. Like I usually teach boundaries at the crate, but sometimes if the dog's well behaved, I open that crate door and I say, let's go party, right? Like let's go have a blast. And I use all of that pent up energy to build a relationship, especially with play. Running off leash, they come to my facility where we're off leash all the time. Interestingly, some of these really wealthy areas, they don't actually have a ton of space for dogs to run off leash, which is really fascinating. Like where I was today, it was a golf course. So a lot of grass, but obviously dogs can't go on the golf course. So all the dogs, it's actually, most of my clients come from this one big neighborhood on a golf course. Every dog there is like reactive. And they're all on leash on a sidewalk.
Right.
So
because they're all on leash all the time. They're frustrated.
They're frustrated.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I do want to say the safety one, and don't give the dogs freedom until they show you that they can make good decisions in the house. I love that. And I loved your line about how your house is a giant crate for the dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned, you mentioned like what's funny about the small dogs, because I get a lot of them as well, but I also get like the pain is actually so small sometimes with these small dogs. Like if you have a Doberman and it's reactive and it's given too much freedom in the house, by the time they're like 4 months, the dog's already destroyed the house. So you're like, I need to do something. With these little dogs, because of just their physical size, sure, they create issues, but they're typically such small issues that owners are like, I could still live with this, you know?
Right. Yeah. To me, that's the big problem for small dogs. I call it the pickup factor. The pickup factor is that literally, and this is what I struggled with when I first got Katie, is that she would be misbehaving out on leash, and I was trying to talk to my neighbors. I could just pick her up. Put her up under my arm, but that didn't teach her anything. But we can, because these dogs are so little, we can instantly solve the problem. And then, it never gets addressed, but it does in some ways get reinforced. And people don't realize that by picking up their dog, they are reinforcing. I had to learn that the hard way. But I think, the pain point with these little dogs is so little, except for the ones that will bite. And I've, definitely had plenty of them. The pain point is so small that people live with unwanted behavior for 2 and 3 and 4 years, or their dog's entire lifetime. I mean, I had a dog in about a year and a half ago, and this little white Maltese mix, boy, she couldn't walk him on leash. She said he didn't like being outside. I mean, and I love this woman, and we have a really good relationship, but he came to me at the age of 8 for a board and train. And she couldn't put him in a crate. He was whining. He had terrible separation anxiety. That was one of my most challenging board and trains ever. But it's because, and she'd had him since he was 8 weeks old, but because the problems were in such a small package, she lived with them until literally when she called me, and he was 8 years old. And this is for these little dogs. That's just barely half their life. His behavior at home was so intolerable. She was thinking of rehoming her dog after 8 years.
What was he doing?
The barking out the window and the going crazy and having nervous breakdowns every time she'd leave the house. I mean, it was just, and again, he wasn't getting any exercise. He wasn't getting any play. He wasn't getting any fulfillment. He was just this massively stressed out, unexercised, poor little ball of nerves. And, the idea
what's tough about a dog like that with the running off leash, this is a point I'm glad you kind of circled me back to it, is sometimes these dogs, because they're perpetually near their owner, when you actually give them off leash freedom, and it happened today, they just stand by the owner.
Yes.
So, and they're almost like not realizing that they have freedom because it's been taken away for such a long time. So they don't even like crave it, you know?
Yeah.
So they just sit there and they're like, what are we doing now?
Well, I run into that scenario with dogs of not just the tiny ones, but the, medium-sized dogs too, because they just don't know what to do with themselves. And part of how I teach an owner to take their dog off leash is I make a real point of saying, you're not standing still. You are walking, okay? You are migrating. You are leading this dog and showing them we are in motion together. And to do that, I said, if the very first, everyone's like, I'm afraid to let him off leash because he'll run away. I said, that's because your idea of letting a dog off leash is you stand somewhere and watch the kid at the playground. And all that's going to do is give the dog a false sense of, I know where mom is, so I don't have to pay attention to her. I said, no, you're moving. You need your dog to pay more attention than you're paying to your dog. When we make them pay attention to our unpredictability and our movement, they learn how to act, frankly, as a pack with us. But there are dogs that are just glued to their owner and they don't know how, they've lost their sense of chasing things.
That actually, now that we circle back, is the hardest one for me, is to get affluent people. They understand the concept of movement, but like moving on grass and like moving in a fun way. That's a tough one. Because so today I took the dogs off leash. It's like, it must have been like a 500 square foot area. There was no room. But all I did with those dogs is kind of like move, push them and run a different way. Move, push. And like the parents were watching and they're like, this is so much fun. Like, I was like, you can do this with your dog. Like you're just kind of mimicking like you used to play tag with your friends, right? It's not that crazy. But getting them to move in a childlike
getting people animated, getting adults animated, getting older adults to be animated and in public is a real challenge. For sure. But once they start doing it, they say, oh, this is fun. And then look at how much fun their dog is having. But they're so used to being uptight and who's watching me and who's looking and, is my dog going to be perfect? I'm like, just let go of all of that. It's all about actually having fun with your dog in a way that both you and they are experiencing something that is completely missing from that relationship.
Can I ask you to teach maybe the listeners, a lot of them, you've been doing this for 8 years. You've built up an amazing business where you said you're privileged to just pick like the clients you want. Take us back to the early days of running the business, right? So yes, you're learning how to be a dog trainer, but let's talk about Hillary, the businesswoman. How did you build up the business? How did you structure, whether you're doing board and trains, day training, private lessons? How did you think about pricing? Could you take us through the business hat that you wear?
Sure. So, but the easiest answer is I tried everything and to see what was in demand in my area, whether it was I didn't do board and trades at first. I didn't do board and trades for the first few years that I was in business. In my area, it seemed to me that the model that everyone was looking for, quite frankly, was kind of a Petco model where you'd go and there would be like a small group class. And I found that was wholly ineffective with owners. I needed to be one-on-one with them. And the environment in a public place or in a sort of pet store setting or even coming to my facility was not the same as the owner and the dog at their home. So I tried the group class thing. I tried, eventually board and train. I tried play group. I tried sort of a daycare model. I also do a lot of online consulting as well. All of it just grew from trial and error of what do people think they want? What am I finding is most effective? And how can I bring those two things together? But from a pricing model, I really found that in the beginning, I wasn't charging anywhere near enough. And what happened for me is when you don't charge very much, when you sort of think of the old, $25 an hour kind of model, people do not get invested in really, owning what they're learning, practicing, embracing it. So for me around here, and again, I know, it's not the same market that most or many dog trainers are in. For me, I found that when I got my prices up to reflect what was an appropriate portion of my, payment for the time out of my day that I'm taking to go to someone, it was a much higher level. I mean, my prices are all on my website. It's no secret. I charge $200 an hour to come and work with people. And my board and trains are, close to $2,000 a week. And that's, for their dog and them learning from me 24/7 model. So when I went from the sort of mentality of dog walker who might be able to help you with some of your problems. I was never a dog walker, but that was where I was thinking, that hourly, lower rate thing, to I am a professional who is going to come and really get to the root cause of why the problems you're having with your dog exist and show you how we can change that. I stopped having to take, everybody that contacted me via email because they had some dog problem. And I started to really say, who can I be most effective with? And how can I help them? And then after I've worked with them and the problem is solved, then how can I bring a value add on to the other end of it? And for me, that is, you only get to be a boarding client of mine once you have successfully trained with me.
Say that again. You only get to be a boarding client with me.
Boarding, as in for travel boarding.
Gotcha.
People don't get to bring I get inquiries all the time. Are you a kennel? Can I drop my dog off? For complete strangers. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, you can't.
It's a headache, right? Because that dog's going to be barking up a storm.
No way. Never. No.
Can't be
and also
in
my house, I have no employees. I
Right.
have no commercial facility. I'm taking people's animals into my home.
Yep.
So I need to know, number one, that the owner and I are on the same page or on the limits I'm going to set for that dog. And number two, they have a baseline of the training that I have done with them. So now I can't even keep all of my clients who want to board their dogs with me a half a dozen times a year for their travel, because I've got 100 doodle families and I'm only one person. Yep. And yes, during school breaks, I will take 10 to 12 small dogs at one time because, I'm really good at doing what I do. But even that, I can't keep up with all the demand for my boarding. And, I have to be careful not to let the whole boarding thing take over my whole business. But as I'm, like I said, I'm in my 60s. So as I move more into a sort of retirement mode, I will have no problem whatsoever with, just running my boarding and working as much or as little as I want.
I love the pricing on the website. I love charging the fact that the premium, turning away dogs that you don't have relationships with. They're a headache. And the way I break it down is new students and mentor dogs. So to me, mentor dogs need to know how to be off leash. Mm-hmm. They need to have impulse control, meaning they need to be able to sleep through the night in a crate or on a place bed without pacing around the house or barking up a storm. And they have to be friendly with people, kids, let's say friendly with dogs and people. Yeah. If they meet those three criteria, they're a mentor dog. And now they're able to be boarded with me on those trips and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I love your model. Out of curiosity, what was the issue with daycare or day training that didn't work for you?
I didn't like the sort of daycare model because people were thinking of it as more babysitting than making progress with their dog.
Gotcha.
So I stopped being open to that. And what I do, which I show periodically when I'm running it, is I have a 1 day a week that for successfully trained dogs, adult dogs, not puppies, who we want to keep their skills up. I call it social group. And they come in on Wednesdays and I have about 10 client dogs and they are paying a premium for essentially 1 day a week of day training with me for 6 to 8 weeks in a row. And it's a very fulfilling day for that dog. It's a very social day for that dog. And it's a day where they're all getting a little bit of a training tune up. So when I started structuring it, and again, it's at least 2, if not 3 times the cost of what people would think per day of paying for daycare. It moved from being something that people thought of as, oh, let me drop my dog off to have fun all day, to, okay, my dog's skills are being reinforced for the right thing, and they're spending time with Hillary, and they are in Hillary's group with other similar safe dogs. Because, I don't take dogs that are, for this group, I don't take dogs that are over 35 pounds. They have to be trained by me. And quite frankly, they're all doodles and small dogs. So
it's not a free for all. It's structured play after they've earned it.
It's structured day trained socialization where the dogs have fun and they continue their skills, but trying to just, sort of be when I first opened and I had closed down my nursery school, I was kind of like, well, I've got to create any income that I can. And that's why I was trying at that time to take, I can take your dog for that day. And it just didn't work because the dogs it wasn't helping them any more than, the daycare down at the local pet salon was doing. And it was making me crazy, and it was making my dogs crazy. And my own 2 dogs, they're both Havanese, and they're seniors now. I mean, one is 9.5 years old, and the other one's 11. And they're very small. They're 11 pounds each. So I am very careful about the dogs that I bring in here to work with. Doesn't mean that there isn't, the 40-pound doodle over there that's in the bigger crate who's bouncing around because he's 1 year old and he's kind of annoying. But I advocate for my dogs because they work with me, and I need to be very conscious of their comfort level with, and any of the dogs that I bring in here.
Something that really helped my business, I just had Paul Connolly on. He talked about burnout. And I think just about any trainer, I don't know if I love labels, but like when you just are like, why am I doing this? I feel tired. I'm kind of like losing the inspiration. What really helped me was day training, shifting a majority of my business to day training. And it came from a place of a lot. I got this objection a lot of, I didn't want to be without my dog for 4, 6, 8 weeks. I love my dog. I want them. So the overnight board and train, a lot of clients are like, I just don't want to be without my dog for that long.
Right.
I hear you loud and clear. So it's like, why is there no Montessori school for dogs? Where, okay, the beginning of the day, maybe they're learning impulse control, or they're learning math, which is like, I have an obstacle course here, or I have like a little stability room where they're like moving through like on a Bosu ball and a wobble board. So like starting the day out with some kind of mental activity, they're learning something. Then they rest. Then maybe we go outside for a pack walk. And then we end the day with a play session. And of course, these are interchangeable, right? Depending on and then they're home by 4 or 5 p.m. The client gets an entire day to themselves. But at the end of the day, or the beginning of the day, I could work with the client and answer their questions. So we can still do a quick 15, 20-minute session to start the day. And here's the best part. The rest of the day is free. So my day's over at 5. And I could work on the business. I could exercise. I could do things for me kind of to fill my cup up. Now, I still do board and trains, but for more behavioral modification cases where the dog really needs a rewiring of the brain, sure, I'll take those in. But I really like 1 or 2 of those, because when the dog is here 24 hours instead of 8 hours, that's 3 times the responsibility. So shifting my business to 80 or 90% day training, 1 or 2 board and train, and I don't do private lessons anymore at all unless I've already built a relationship with the dog. And it's my business has grown, but my stress has gone down.
That's great.
And I think a lot of trainers would benefit from that, because when you have 3 or 4 board and trains, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I don't get burned out on board and train is because I rarely have more than 1 at a time. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have client dogs in boarding
Right.
as well, but the board and train, I really only do one at a time. A couple of years ago when I was really slammed, I took two at a time, and one time, just because it was kind of an emergency situation, I took a third on. That was a mistake. Because the dogs all got the training that they needed, but it took so much out of me. And for 3 straight weeks, I was a misery, and it was too much stress on me, and I won't make that mistake again. But yeah, I mean, the people who do board and trains that take on, 4 of them at a time, month after month after month after month, that's just, it's
they have to. So where we live, you get a lot of boarding clients because affluent people travel a lot.
Right.
There's parts of America where they might live in a rural area. They're not traveling at all.
Right.
So they don't get those boarding clients, but they do get a lot of behavior cases.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to pay the bills, take on
Sure.
3, 4, probably 5 board and trains.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I suggested, or what I've spoken with some trainers behind the scenes, is just offer day training. Let those dogs go home and integrate the lessons if they can learn. If you could teach the dog in those 8-9 hours, if it's not a huge behavior case, if it's just obedience, off leash training and things like that, bring the dog, let the dog go home. And now you have the afternoon, the evening to just fill up your cup, work on the business, work on yourself. Yeah. So it's really, really helped me. Tell me, how did you stumble upon Stony Dennis?
YouTube. The algorithm, when I was just doing different dog trainers years ago, it shot the algorithm threw one of his videos up to me, and I saw him walk in that small challenges course, and I was like, what is that? I mean, I really, really envy that. I wish, because I live up here in Massachusetts, and the yard is practically unusable for half the year. Right now we've got snowpack that I can't even believe. But boy, do I envy his facility and his space and his farm and it's so, but I find watching him, listening to him talk and watching him walk dogs is a stress reliever to me.
It's therapeutic, right?
It's therapeutic. It's almost like meditative.
I call him the Bob Ross of dog training.
Yeah, he's so relaxing to listen to, and I'm like, okay, well, in my next life, maybe I'll live in another part of the country, and I'll have something set up like that. But I love watching him work. He's great.
The interesting thing about him, the one sticking point that I have for him is he's with e-collars and allowing dogs to run off leash. The e-collar isn't always for the trainer. It's for the owners. It's such a magnificent
for the owner. Yeah.
Such a magnificent tool for everyday dog. It kind of like, the disparity in skill between dog trainers and dog owners goes away when you have that tool.
Yes, completely. I agree with you.
Use it properly, obviously.
Yes.
That should be.
But you have to understand, the reason why he doesn't see any need for that is because he does not live in the suburbs.
But he trains dogs for the suburbs.
He does. And I question, when those dogs leave his facility, how much off-leash life they have at home. I'm willing to bet it's not that much, because the owners don't have that skill. This is why I always tell people the e-collar is the same for me as the seatbelt in the car. And when my sons learned to drive a car, they learned you don't do that without the seatbelt. And you can be the best driver in the world, just like your dog can have the greatest recall in the world, but you cannot predict what that world is going to throw at you. You can't predict the car crash that you could have in your car, and you can't predict the situational crash that you and your dog could run into in even the safest of off-leash areas. So to me, that is I'm just not comfortable sending a dog home with an owner that they don't have the tone of voice and the relationship and everything else that I have in order to have them go off leash. And yet that dog respects enough oh, yeah, I know I've got this on, I have to come back.
Who else left an impression on you when you were kind of scouring the internet looking for answers with Katie?
Oh, well, frankly, the trainers that I get, like, I still get a lot of value from watching Larry Crone. I've been to, him and Jay and Joel's seminars. Love Joel and Jay, love the three of them. They're great. But, there's some, I love Sherry Lucas, been to her seminars. I've been affected by a lot of different trainers, but what I am not is interested in name dropping, who I think is the best, nor am I interested in bashing people who might make decisions that I wouldn't make. I'm so anti-trainer war culture that it's hard for me to spew out the list of all of the different trainers that I have taken good and bad from. Because it's just, to me, I'm not participating in that.
Do you think it's gotten worse, better, or that's just the internet and how it's always going to be?
I think it's the internet and how it's always going to be. But I think way too many people are spending way too much time caring about, talking about other people. Just run your own business. We're all different. We all have our niche. You never, I never need to tear somebody else down to try to make myself bigger. That's not who I am.
You just said something interesting. You said, run your own business. And I think this is a passion of mine, because I did come at this from a business standpoint, but not everyone has that business gene or thinks of this as a business. Like the remark I get often is, the reason why some people became dog trainers is because they don't really like to work with people, so they just want to train dogs.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. Mm-hmm.
You've heard that a lot too.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're running a business, and the people that are paying you are people, not dogs, right? Yeah. And a business has to make money to succeed, regardless of how you slice that. And I believe that the reason why on social media there's fighting is because that gets attention.
Yes.
And I think what's been maybe conflated is we think of, attention leads to dollars. So like there's this, if I get followers, that will convert to dollars.
Yeah.
But that's not really the case, right? Because not all followers are created the same. It's who is actually watching your content. Is it people in Wellesley who, are clients and might be potential clients who want to see what Hillary's doing with their dog so they can learn? Or refer someone, one of their neighbors, to Hillary. That's going to lead to dollars and cents. So Hillary's making educational content. One of her clients could hit that little arrow, share it with a friend. Now that friend schedules a valuation with Hillary. Right. Even if that friend lives in California, she could schedule a virtual consultation with Hillary, which she added. And now Hillary, Wellesley Dogs, has another revenue stream, virtual consultation.
Right.
But just like, hey, I'm bashing trainer X and now I got 50,000 followers, but they're never going to convert to dollars.
Right. I know. It just, to me, I'm not here because I want to be a social media influencer. I mean, I've got a decent sized following on Instagram in particular. And Facebook is, been growing an awful lot lately. I didn't even know anybody who's still on Facebook, but it's where all the trainer wars that I see go on. But I'm not interested in pursuing social media cred, but in building my business from a part-time to what is now a full-time, very successful business. I pushed and pushed and pushed at Instagram for about a year and a half, and that really paid off in my visibility to people in this area, many of which were looking for a trainer for these little fluffy dogs. Okay.
And what did you do? What were your, what are some tactics that, maybe someone who's listening could implement?
Well, I tried to think of the things that I know now, and I still do this on a daily basis. What do I know now that I wish I knew when I got Katie? And how can I make it simple and easy for a new owner to follow? So what I try to do with my Instagram is give people the information that I did not stumble upon. I came across, when I got Katie, tons and tons of technical, how to train a dog, what not to do. Mostly it was all what not to do. And I need to be able to tell people, here's what you need to do, and here's the simplest way that I can boil it down to how you do that. And then I made a series of I had to get comfortable. Before I started dog training, I didn't have Facebook. I didn't have Instagram. I'd never been on social media. I watched YouTube, but I had to get comfortable speaking to a camera. Okay. And before I was comfortable doing that, I used to put up I would make through the Instagram stories feature very simple tips on these sort of emerald colored backgrounds. And I would put that up because I wished I had stumbled upon that tip when I first got my first puppy. I wish somebody had told me, don't feel bad for using your crate much of the time when you can't watch your puppy in the beginning. I just really basic stuff, but that's what, for whatever reason, at the time that I got into it, took off. And people, I still get new followers, and many of whom I'll never meet, but I've also got quite a decent business of one-time consultations with people from all around the country, and frankly, internationally. I had to figure out how to get paid internationally because, up until I started getting requests from a lot of different places in Europe and whatever, I don't know. I'm like, oh, you don't have Venmo?
Bitcoin.
I don't know. Yeah. Yep, definitely Bitcoin, but eBay. But
really?
Yeah, you can do international payments on eBay
through eBay instead of just PayPal.
Oh no, PayPal. Yeah, that's what I meant.
What do I know now that I wish I knew when I got Katie, and how can I simplify that so people can understand?
Yep.
And what not to do. That's what you said. What?
No. I was getting a whole lot of what not to do information, but it was completely the opposite of what I would tell people what not to do now.
Does anything come to mind?
Less. Yeah. I tell all my clients, give yourself that first 48 hours to fall in love with that puppy and be a goofy idiot and get everything wrong. And then from about day 3 and on, less affection, more direction. I said, everybody wants to love and cuddle and pet because we get dopamine and serotonin from doing all these things, but it will end up being, you're going to be reinforcing things that you don't want your puppy to do. So I tell people, set aside a time in the evening after your work day is over and think about it as your puppy's school day is over. And then just give yourself 20 minutes or half an hour to just love on that puppy. But you can't be doing that all day long because you will teach the puppy that they're not safe unless you're there touching them and they're glued to you all the time. And you're going to be reinforcing all sorts of things that you don't realize you're reinforcing.
So do you have any pet peeves that clients do? And I'll tell you 2 of mine and then I want to hear yours. So mine, both of them come in the car. So one is driving with these small dogs on their lap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the other is letting dogs stick their head out the window.
Yeah. No, both of those are safety issues. Those aren't pet peeves to me. Those are non-negotiable. We don't do that. And I can't get my clients, many of my clients do they don't, with the small dogs, people aren't really letting them put their heads out because they're going to fall out and, the dog will die. But many of them let them sit in their laps. And I actually, literally 2 days ago, for the very first time ever in my life, I'm coming home from an off-leash trip. And this itty bitty tiny little white dog that is in with me staying She squeezed herself out of the cargo area around the barrier and at a stoplight, like I'm sitting there at a stoplight and she jumps into my lap and I'm like, how the hell did you get up here? And I showed that on Instagram the other day because I'm like, I can't believe this happened. But yeah, to me, that whole thing is just a safety issue that I'm not going to go. I'm not going to get there. But from the harder pet peeve for me, because it's not just, you can't just tell someone to turn it off, is dealing with how much emotional baggage that particularly I don't find this in the family, the busy parents with the kids situation. I find this in the coaching a successful kind of 30-something owner who lives alone and who is channeling a lot of potential emotional frustration and other emotional baggage into the relationship with the dog. And it's not a pet peeve, but it's a situation that I can't always overcome.
Can I distill that down? So
Please.
we're the lonely generation. I'm 36. So
yeah.
Dating, if you're not dating someone and you haven't maybe dated someone for a while, you get a pet and then you channel all of that dating energy into the pet.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And it's hard. I get it. But when it goes to an extreme and starts manifesting in behavior that is anxiety that pet can't handle, sometimes I can help the owner see it and sometimes they can't and we have to part ways.
Can I ask you to be candid? Is it typically female or male?
Female.
And is
entirely.
It feeling
it's
like
entirely female? I work with probably 90% females. Yeah.
Interestingly, as do I. Is it typically that they feel like their life from a companionship partner standpoint is like kind of passing them by?
I think so. Yeah.
And they come, do you almost become like a therapist in that scenario? I know you probably don't want to, but
I don't want to, but I do. And I try to be my best for them. And I try to be as loving and understanding as I can be. But sometimes just in a few scenarios I can think of over the last few years, it has crossed into an area of impasse where it started to create conflict. And I had to say, I think you need to work with somebody else. I can't keep saying the same thing over and over again. And we're not getting anywhere, but you're starting to resent me about it. So
I'm picturing golden doodles are typically the dog of choice.
Yeah.
And you had 5 boys.
I have 5 sons who are now ages 38 down to 22.
All right. Well, don't hate me. Maybe this is an opportunity for him. 5 sons, and now you're getting some.
Yeah. No. I mean, 2 of my sons are married, and one's about to get engaged, and they're all very different. But I know that the world that we live in is not easy for young adults, and it wasn't easy when I was a young adult. And my husband, who's 8 years older than I am, so he's almost 70, it wasn't easy for us either, but it was a different type of hard. What you guys in your generation are dealing with are you've all been bombarded much of your lives with a lot of emotional baggage, and that's a stressor. It's a real stressor that what I observe people often try to resolve by bringing a companion dog into their lives. And that can be a really, really great thing. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to have the balance, So I just try to help people find the balance there.
I call it the abundance of choice era, right? So I don't know if you remember, of course, what am I talking about? Of course, when you'd use the radio and then you'd seek. I don't know why I said that. I apologize. And
you would find a song that you kind of liked, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, if I skip, I don't know if I'll find this one. That's a good song. So like you enjoy that song. But now, because you have all of the world's songs ever created on your iPad or iPhone,
in your pocket. Yeah, it's true.
Almost every song that you're not listening to is competing with the song that you're playing, right? So like with relationships, the metaphor here, guys, is like you're always in this never-ending I can do better.
Right.
And that is daunting.
Yeah.
And then you're like, here's my Teddy who loves me, my golden doodle. He's not going anywhere.
That's right. So,
Easy. I'm not talking about you, Mike. Dude, cane corsos, stop. The most protective breed I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I have 2 of them, huge. They love to bark in their crate. Like anything, they're like ready to go. They're like, this isn't even their house. What are you defending?
Yeah. That's something. Yeah. I don't work with those.
No.
I'm too old. I'm too old to go be putting myself in front of working dogs. Seriously.
I knew you were going to be a breath of fresh air. I want to ask you, just like to kind of wrap this up and take this home. If you were to say anything that I didn't ask you yet, not just from dog training, you were a teacher for 25 years, right?
Yeah.
You molded, and you mentioned you were a Montessori teacher. If you could touch on exactly what that meant because a lot of people might not know. What does Hillary's life look like in the next 5-10 years? And what kind of legacy? And would you want to share or leave to people listening to the podcast?
Okay. Being a grandmother in my 60s. Here's what I can tell you that I wish I knew, whether it was when I was running my preschool or whether I was starting to be a dog trainer or when I was raising my kids or, at any juncture of my life. Being an older adult, you get to look back and there is a wisdom thing that happens. And what I would tell myself back at the starting point of all those other things is stop comparing your life or yourself or your business to other people's. Stop stressing about doing everything right because nobody does everything right. Everybody is flawed and everybody makes mistakes and everybody is human. Stop comparing your social outside to, or everybody else's social outside to your inside, because we all are vulnerable. And at the same time, push yourself to do what you want to do. Going back to where you were saying that this is just the age of unlimited choices, you're right. And that can be really overwhelming, but it can also be incredibly empowering. And I was born in the 1960s. I spent until well into the early 2000s thinking that I had to fit inside that square box, that this is what people do and that's what people do and this is what mothers do and this is what fathers do and this is what teachers do and yada 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 yada. Good parents do this. Stop with all of you thinking that all the rules are correct, because they're not. They're just generalizations. And if you are kind and safe and fair, whether you are raising a child, whether you are training a dog, no matter what method or tools or props that you bring to it, if you are kind and safe and fair, you'll get there. And good for you if you're not doing it the same way other people are, because I'm sure as heck not. But when I stopped comparing myself to the social, norms and the experts, I got a whole lot happier and I'm enjoying my life a whole lot more.
I love that.
Oh,
a lot of lessons. This podcast it started with, Katie, how Hillary got into dog training and found her way and then began to teach clients in her area. Then there was business advice. And then there was a little bit of wisdom. I love that word. This is called doggy stoic, right? I think of stoicism as ancient wisdom. And, something that helped me, right? Because no one wants to feel like their life passed them by without accomplishing what it is that, they want to accomplish. And then also at the same time, seeing perpetually other people, whether you know them or you don't, accomplishing. That's really, that causes probably a tremendous amount of anxiety, is to kind of stretch your life horizon too, right? So yes, 30s used to feel old, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but on the scale of like where we're headed as humanity, I think people, it's safe to say, are going to live until 100 plus.
Yeah.
So just kind of keeping that in perspective that, life hasn't passed you by at 35, 36. And, that doesn't mean don't play with urgency, but that also doesn't mean like feeling like it's all said and done at the same time.
Just don't assume that you know what it is that you must accomplish in your life, because the it may not have ever occurred to you. When I was 35 or even 40 years old, I wouldn't have guessed I'd ever own a dog. Forget about being a dog trainer and helping people all around the world with, solve their little dog problems. You have no idea what it is that the circumstances of life might put in front of you. Just keep your eyes open and pay attention.
You didn't describe yourself as such, but you just said you were like put into a box, like the 60s babies, right? So you were a teacher. You're not really a dog trainer. You're a businesswoman.
Well, yeah.
Right? Like who would have thought you would have, from teacher to businesswoman? I would probably assume, knowing what teachers make, like
I didn't work in a school. I ran an independent toddler program from my kennel room.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yes. I found a niche that wasn't being met, which is in Massachusetts. Children have to be 2.9 or 3 years old every September 1st in order to go to Montessori or nursery school.
2.9?
2 years, 9 months.
Okay.
And in order to go to the regulations back then were, in order to enroll in school, you had to be that age. And I saw a niche for not quite 2-year-olds through not quite 3-year-olds that didn't make the cutoff. And so I would get 20 new students every year that didn't make the school cutoffs. And they were here in my now kennel room with these lovely dogs. But you can still see, because it's here for my grandchildren, the remnants of my preschool.
So you were always in business for yourself?
Oh, I was always in business for myself. I've always been self-employed. Yeah.
And how did you find those clients back in the day with no social media?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I networked in the ways that we had back then, via face-to-face with people at my then young children's school, or on mothers' forums when the internet was first getting started, chat boards. There wasn't social media, but there were mothers groups that were just starting on, online.
And why do you think people trusted you with their kids?
Well, because they virtually, in the early years, in the later years, I got people from towns all around connected to my town. But in the early years, it was literally people who knew me and knew my children up at the school and trusted me because we had that personal connection.
It was like you said with Katie, right? So you started training her, and then you started helping friends and family. Mm-hmm. So with your kids, you took them to school, and they're like well-behaved kids, and we know Hillary. We see Hillary. They start bringing their kids to you, and it just organically grew.
Yeah.
Can you leave us with these three things? The first 3 things you work with and teach a toddler in your Montessori program, and then the first 3 things you teach a new dog that comes through your training program today.
Oh, good Lord. Well, they're very much the same. You're going to be okay away from your mom or your owner. Let's calm down and just be together, and look to me for guidance, because I'm going to be clear and I'm going to make it simple for you. That's it.
That's another episode for you guys. I knew you would enjoy it. Hillary, you're amazing. Thank you so much. Where can people follow you?
Probably the best place is on my Instagram, which is Good Wellesley Dogs or Good Dogs Training Hillary. Either one of those will get you to me.
Thank you.